is your home for Kings talk and so much more.
Live and vocal.
Allen Stiles on Sactown Sports.
Your favorite hour of the week is here, 12 o'clock on the dot on a Thursday, and it's not just any Thursday. You have the Sacramento Kings sliding on in to the first round, and we have three gentlemen that were in the building that got the invite to be in the building, and I cannot wait to talk to them as Brendan Nunes. I mean, there is so much content on Sactown Sports right now on the Instagram as well. Brandon is kind of working as he's on with us. We got Chris Watkins in the building. We got Frankie Cardicelli. That's right. All in the building. And guys, let's just start here. You were at the party. Obviously, there was some windhorse fingers going on saying, why have a draft party without a first round draft pick? And here we are with a draft pick. Before we even get to Nique Clifford and the actual pick, just give me a rundown of last night, when you may have felt like a move was going to happen. Obviously, stuff started popping off after about the ninth pick or so. So, Frankie, let's start with you. Just give us a lay of the land here for those of us that weren't in the building.
Once again, you definitely got the invite, I'm pretty sure.
We'll talk about it all.
Okay. I mean, sure. Whatever.
He could have been there.
You could be there. I mean, if there was night two, you could have been there tonight too.
It was your night.
They're only doing it. They only did it last night.
Okay.
No, I think that, reading tea leaves, I think a lot of people expected the Kings to make a move last night. And I think, Carmichael Davis said it best, just kind of, from what he was hearing from people around the organization that are in the know, that they're not going to be reckless. They're not going to be, overly aggressive, kind of, which I think caused a lot of groans on the Kings fan base. Like, okay, here we go. Another cautiously aggressive, but still aggressive approach from a GM when, we saw what Monty did or didn't do for his time here with Sacramento. But once things kind of got past pick 15, it just kind of seemed like there were things in the works, and just kind of from what we were hearing from other people that were in the know, that they were trying hard for it. And there's guys that they had targeted, and, Nique Clifford was a guy who the Kings had their eyes on for a little bit and for the weeks leading into the draft. And while they didn't work him out, they did meet with him in Chicago. Scott Perry in the front office did watch him go through a pre-draft workout, or I think it was a pre-combine workout in Chicago. So not quite a one-on-one in Sacramento per se, but someone who fits the bill of what they want to do. We just have interchangeability, versatility, guys who can play multiple positions, shoot the basketball, play defense. Yeah. And, but really, as far as last night goes, the cookies were great to be back in the building, and great to see the Kings making some moves again. And, we'll see about tonight.
Really good popcorn, too.
The best it's ever been.
Yeah.
Steph Curry, you said, right, has a list of best popcorns, or did you tell me that last night, or someone told me?
Someone else mentioned that I think Golden One was top 10.
It was the best I ever had last night. It was a great night.
I agree. You really missed out on it.
That sounds like it.
It was a great time.
Kings make a trade.
Yeah.
Best popcorn.
Oh, I would have been all over social media.
They had a private concert for us. It was great.
Are you serious?
Yeah. At the end there.
Swayze.
Right after they traded for the pick.
Are you serious?
No, there was like 13 of us in an empty gym.
There could have been
10:30.
It was a very quiet room.
There could have been 14. Chris Watkins, how are you feeling about everything? Did you expect them to make a move? And we always kind of talk big picture with you and kind of how you view the Kings. What I've been saying is I was more excited, honestly, about the thought process of the Kings and how this whole thing laid out. Look, what Nique Clifford will be, I don't really know, but just the thought process and how, hey, let's target the Thunder. They literally don't have enough roster spots at this point, so we shouldn't have to give up that much. And then they go out and get a guy who matches what they've been saying. I know Kings fans have been sick of you're saying one thing but doing another. Whether or not he's a star, we don't know, but at least everything they're doing seems to have a plan and a purpose.
Yeah, for sure. I think if anything, it's a positive sign that it's Scott Perry's first imprint on this roster, on this team, and I think up until this point, we've been kind of wondering like which direction are they going to go. Obviously, there's tons of rumors. Like, are they going to lean young? Are they going to try and run this back? I don't think we ultimately got an answer, but I think we got closer to an answer because I know I tongue in cheek a little bit with they have a draft party, but they don't have a pick. There's definitely a situation where last night the Kings don't make a pick. I don't think So the fact that they felt the need to get back into get into the first round, get a young asset in here next year, I think it could be maybe down the line we can look back at it and say this was the sign that they weren't going to go all in towards, hey, can we make another play and push or see what we can do with this current unit? And again, I would say that even if the DeMar DeRozans, the Levine, the Sabonis, even if all three are still on the roster during the season or up till the trade deadline, I think yesterday made me feel more positive that even if that's true, the mindset is more future based than trying to maximize the most out of these guys.
Brendan?
Yeah, Perry is, the big thing that he keeps mentioning is trying to establish an identity, and that being goal number one right now. And so, like Chris said, this is his first move to go and get a guy that he's identified very much fits that. So I think when you don't have a first rounder, you sit there and probably try to be pretty opportunistic and look for an opportunity to where you think you can select a guy that you had valued higher than where he fell to, and obviously opportunity cost of what you're giving up. But some of the future firsts that were given up yesterday were crazy trades. Like the Pelicans trade was ridiculous. What they gave up an unprotected first to move
Joe Dumars cooking
to move up 10 spots. I think they were the one that moved up 10 spots there. It's 2027 San Antonio top 16 protected first that the Kings gave up for this, that would then convey that same year into 2 second rounders, their own and Charlotte's, meaning that you don't have this like log jam like we dealt with the Kevin Huerter trade for years of, these future firsts are locked up. No, it would turn into 2 seconds that year. You're really giving up 1 first and 2 seconds that are going to just be on standby, potentially moving in that deal. So I think it's good value. It's going to still be, this is a guy that's picked 24. There's a, 50% chance that this guy plays out. Like, got to keep in mind that this isn't a for sure hit, I think there's a lot of similarities to Devin Carter, for example. And that's not to say bad things about Devin Carter, but it wasn't great in year one, even though there were injuries involved. So I like seeing Scott Perry go out and make his imprint, trying to establish that identity and get guys that fit that a little bit.
Yeah. And I do wonder, obviously, they like what they saw from Nique Clifford, but I do, and I said this earlier, look, we know that there was at the very least a conversation that was had in as far as hiring Doug Christie with Scott Perry, where it was, hey, we'd kind of like you to hire Doug Christie. I'm not saying that Scott Perry didn't have a choice, but Doug Christie was kind of probably mentioned a good bit in that conversation. Was this maybe an opportunity for Scott Perry to say, okay, so I didn't get to do my phone was ringing incessantly. Maybe he didn't even get to pick up the calls, right? So he doesn't get to pick his head coach. And as it stood going into last night, they didn't have a first round pick. Not to say that it was a reach or anything, as Brendan just kind of laid out what the Kings could be or would be missing out on. As much as they like Nique Clifford, was there a little bit of maybe I want to put my stamp on the roster as well, right? So not to say that they didn't love Nique Clifford, but there might be a part of them that said, I want somebody on this roster that I can say, this is one of my guys, before we start doing the free agency stuff. And the first move is getting Russell Westbrook, and people are saying, what the hell is going on?
I think that'd be more of like I want to make a statement with this roster more than Nique Clifford, because I think us on this side of the table have heard Nique Clifford for last couple of days or a week. And I feel like that's someone that if he was there, they wanted to get. And I do think if you're going to make a more aggressive move like that, which could happen on Monday, maybe that move will come where it's like Scott Perry in that front office saying, okay, let's assert ourselves and like show that we're not messing around. I don't know if that's going to happen just yet. I feel like if that was going to happen, you might see more of an aggressive move as well, like the Trae Young trade, which it sounds like they're completely out on that. I feel like this is a matter of a guy who just fits the bill. And stop. Don't make that face. That's not happening.
Okay.
It's not.
Yeah, I read.
You read Sam Amick.
Yeah,
it's
the
not
banger.
Happening. It's not happening. But Clifford was a guy they liked because again, he fits the bill. The Kings don't have many players who can be interchangeable. I mean, Keegan Murray is someone who plays 3 and the 4, and more comfortable as a 3, but someone you can kind of plug in at the 3 or the 4 in a pinch. Same thing with Keon Ellis. He can defend positions 1 through 3, but he's more comfortable with the 2. Now you have a guy who kind of is more of that shooting guard, small forward combo. And will he pan out? We never know about draft picks. Draft picks are a crapshoot. We've seen number 1 picks like Anthony Bennett, sorry, shots fired, completely fall apart and out of the league within what felt like weeks. but we've seen guys that get drafted late in the draft, just like Clifford, they can pan out. So I think right now that's kind of what the Kings are hoping for, that they have a guy who they can kind of build around, have a rookie, a young player to build around, because again, Devin Carter's future is a little blurry. We'll see if he ends up, opening with camp in camp with them this fall. But I think right now, similar skill sets, but different positions.
Any of you, I wouldn't use the word upset, but thought about the point guard situation, or did you think, oh, they got to go get a point guard if they're going to go into the first round? Or was it just, hey, and this is kind of how I felt, late enough in the first round, just get what you feel like you need. If that is a point guard, cool. But, once Walter Clayton ended up going 18, I'm just assuming whatever, if there were conversations being had, that was probably just a little too expensive.
I think that when you're in, and yeah, Matt George mentioned that Walter Clayton was one of the guys that they liked too. Like you mentioned, he went at 18. But I think that at 24 in the draft, like positional fit goes out the window, age goes out the window. It's just, who do we think can be an NBA player?
Yeah.
Because again, the hit rate isn't great at this position.
Kyle Lowry.
No, there's good players for sure. There are definitely good players that exist at this point in the draft.
Serge Ibaka.
And something that Chris has mentioned a lot recently is like the increased value of role players and ideal role players. And I think that Nique fits into that. A guy that's, jack of all trades, master of none. You got to make sure that the three is going to be there and some of these other things. What's the size going to look like defensively? But I think that his prototype of player is becoming more valuable in the NBA.
Chris?
Yeah. I mean, I think, overall, I think it's a good fit. It seems to make sense. I was a little, I don't know. I feel like I was a little bit surprised that they decided to I don't know. It just, to me, it feels like it's a good selection, but I think I heard Dave say earlier today, and I just kind of can't get it out of my head that, and I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing, that this does feel similar to, I think you mentioned it too, Brendan, like a Devin Carter pick or the Davion Mitchell pick. It's a Keegan, like it's a 23-year-old that, I think there's value in it because the first 9 picks were freshmen. And so, maybe you kind of get a guy who's a little bit more developed, a little longer in the tooth, but I don't know. It just, I don't know. It was,
did you want more of like a more higher upside and younger that you can kind of bring along more? Or do you, like, I guess the fact of they keep bringing in guys, those guys you named, that are quote unquote NBA ready. Cause a lot of people I see say he's NBA ready. And we did hear that about Davion. We heard that about Keegan, and
feels
now
like it's about productive at the college level.
Yes.
And it's like you can plug and play him in the NBA right now. He doesn't have to kind of cut his teeth or anything like that. He's not a young 19-year-old that has to kind of go through the motions. Is that kind of something you would like to see more of with the Kings, because they kind of are in limbo, kind of have a more of a project, I guess, with higher upside?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I think it's just. I guess so. I think it's still just kind of a little bit struggling to figure out the identity. I think that if they would have gone with somebody who's, young and more of a project, like I think you were mentioning, Brendan, that you saw Nolan Traore, like he's a guy who went 19 to Brooklyn, like he's a real project. I don't know if I would have felt good about the Kings taking that route at point guard, but it feels like, I don't know. Like, I just don't know how I would have felt about them, because your question ultimately was like, should they have addressed the point guard situation in the draft? I don't know if you were going to find your starter there. Like, I think a Walter Clayton and a Dennis Schroeder is fine. Yes. It's just, I ultimately don't know. It's the Davion Mitchell question of, are you drafting a backup point guard? And that's fine to do at 24. There's nothing wrong with that, but I just don't know if that's where I would try and address a backup. Backup point guard you can get, for the mid-level exception. Yeah. It's just a weird proposition.
And we've been aligned on the point guard thing. You and I have been, and that's how I felt about it. What's interesting, because I hear what you're saying. It's just a matter of who you think this team is. Because to me, I didn't have a problem with it, because it is where the league is going, and it's somebody that can slot in and fit and do whatever it is you need to do, right? And shoot the basketball, defend, all that stuff. The funny part is that a good pick for the Kings, because the Kings aren't actually there, right? How much are they going to get to use?
Right.
how much are they going to get to use a Nique Clifford because y'all are the 10 seed? You know what I mean? These guys excel. That's your ninth guy, eighth, ninth guy off the bench that randomly kills the other team in a playoff series or something like that. They're not there yet. So I think it makes sense if you think that you're going to be competing and you want someone to just slot in and know their role.
Right.
If you don't feel like they're there, then that makes a little less sense. That pick does.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
I mean, definitely on the older end, especially like
Yeah.
24. We're talking like Chris Duarte age at this
No,
point.
he's 23.
Going to be 24 in February. Sorry.
That's
in
next
February.
year. Then
Yeah,
I'm 40.
trade
Then I'm
deadline.
40. I'm 40. I'm 40
Sure.
now.
Sure.
No, that's a little different. He's entering his age 24 season.
Look, here, and I got to be real careful here. Okay. And I believe, yeah, Dave did say this on air. I'm just double checking. But
Oh boy.
the idea, and no, hang with me. Some of these draft picks that we've seen with the college and more traditional, when we were growing up, that's kind of what we saw. You would see the one and dones, but hey, man, that's why Johnny Flynn went over. Hey, we've seen this guy do this. Is there any thought process that may or may not worry you where you say you have a Scott Perry who maybe is more traditional in that thinking, and I guess Monty was too in that way, more traditional in that thinking where it's, we've got this guy on film. He went to school for however long. I think Nique went for, was there for 5 years. And that's the direction that we want to go versus maybe some of these younger GMs that are, I'll go take a Amen Thompson from Overtime Elite. I don't know what the hell Overtime Elite is, but the dude looks like he can play, him and his brother. So is there maybe a generational thing going on here where it's, we're used to the college dudes that we've seen do it for years and improve for years, low, and I hate to do the shtick, but the lower ceiling, higher floor guys.
Yeah, like who's the last 23, 24-year-old that like was a rookie and is a star player now, I guess?
Jaime Jaquez, go get him, by the way. Go get him.
Star is crazy.
Go get him.
Didn't he have a down year this year?
He did.
Now
they're trying to get rid of him.
Yeah, now you go get him.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I can't remember the last time the Kings brought in. I mean, we can think about it right now, but when did they bring in a 19-year-old? Yeah, like
It's second round though. Like it's
Right.
way different when
Colby
you're
was
talking
20.
about this point of the draft.
To answer
Yeah.
your first question, I think the answer is Jalen Brunson, but even he was like the 31st pick in the draft.
Brunson is the answer for like an older prospect that has made it work.
And he was also a champion in college
right, and
player
he
of the
was
year.
a star in
He was.
college.
But I think also the difference here is that like previously, a lot of these guys went to huge schools, like top tier schools. This is Colorado State we're talking about. Even you look at not just the Kings history, but Scott Perry's. You go back to, there's a lot of Duke in Kentucky. There's Emmanuel Quickly. There's RJ Barrett, and this is a little bit of a smaller school. Like we're talking about a Mountain Conference West first team guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Which that's great. It's also a different level of competition than what we're talking about with some of these other guys. So I don't know. I think that we're getting a peek into potentially Perry's preference and like type of player that he likes. But I think the answer to your question is just more about personal preference than anything.
Again, you know what? I feel as if we'll learn even a little bit more. I know it's the second round, but if they go older again, because to me, second round, that's 3-0 swinging to me.
Sure.
Wow.
Hold on now. Go get Maxime. Maxime, he might be older.
Well,
but
what I'm saying is if it's a year ago, they're not even making this pick. They're trading it for cash. So if they keep the pick already, we're seeing that, Scott Perry, different kind of process here than Monty McNair, because how many times did Monty trade away a second round pick for future picks or cash? I think, at least 4 or 5 picks. So.
Could also be like, each organization's in their own, risk management profile where,
Yes.
The Kings are in a spot where, especially these past couple of years, like you can't afford to have a zero. Like you can't afford to have a Johnny Davis. We can't draft somebody and have it be Ben McLemore, Thomas Robinson, right? Like you have to get some, even if it's Davion Mitchell, like you have to get some sort of backup level production. And there's teams like Brooklyn and, there's teams that are in better situations than the Kings where you can use your draft pick and say, well, if this doesn't work out, like, I think the Blazers are a pretty weird example, but like they clearly felt like they're in a spot where we can take a swing. Like we nailed Denny Advia.
Yeah.
Scoot's kind of turning around. We just cashed in on Anthony Simons.
Let's go get our fifth center.
Yeah.
Like, if it works out, it works out. And if it doesn't, then it ultimately doesn't break their back. But I think the Kings are in a spot, especially once you trade up, where it's like you can't really trade up and then get an 18-year-old and, say, I don't know. It's just a lot tougher. You need like instant production. And I think that's where the mindset has been, at least with, the Devin Carter pick. Is that's a guy we think we're going to be a playoff team. We want a guy who can contribute in the playoffs. We want a Christian Brown type guy. I think Keegan was kind of a similar thought process as well. And I think that's probably why it's been leaning older. But I think, to your point, like second round might be a time to take some swings.
I also think in like Perry's current position, going back to trying to establish an identity, a culture, like you bring a young player in that's a raw prospect, ball of clay sort of thing into an already established identity. And then you're optimistic about him panning out. If you're trying to establish an identity and you need somebody to help you do that, it's going to be an older prospect compared to some 19-year-old that you're like, hey, try to help like establish something here.
Well, and that's why, as much as I like the Nique Clifford pick, that's why I'm wondering how much of this was about Nique Clifford and about this is who the idea of Nique Clifford, as funny as it sounds. But let's just get one thing clear here. Okay. It doesn't sound like any of the three of you are especially juiced off of Nique Clifford.
I'm excited about them having a rookie.
Yeah.
Well, you're going to Vegas. That's why.
That is true. That is true.
And I'm going to try to go with you.
Oh, yeah.
I think that ideally, from a skill set standpoint and from a 6'6" guard forward, that to me is enticing. I feel like I want to see what he has in summer league and see what he has in training camp and kind of, like you said, they have a rookie. They have a rookie now. They can kind of just see what they have going forward. They did not have that earlier, entering yesterday, which, no first round pick, 42nd pick. We're looking at people like Tyrese Proctor, who still could be on the board, come 42nd, but this guy has a lot more upside. This is a player, by the way, who in Clifford was listed on a lot of people's top 20 on mock drafts, 18, 19, like that range. Really, I saw a lot of in there. So again, and you see this with drafts every year, people saying, wow, they nailed the pick, like A+. Like we saw with Devin Carter last year. And Devin Carter might be a very good NBA player.
Kevin O'Connor
at some point. You never know.
Don't move him for Cam Johnson.
Probably a mistake.
Sam Vecini loved Robert Woodard.
Big Bob. So that's what I'm saying, though. Draft, like, grades, all that stuff. Like, I don't want to pay too much attention to it, but the people that watch college basketball a lot more than any of us, or at least us at this table, you at home, I watch a lot of college basketball. They think that this is a good pick. So I trust their intuition. And, the Kings been missing on some draft picks recently, and we'll see if they hit on this one.
Yeah, also it's a forward too. Like we haven't seen Keegan was the last forward that they took, especially as a young prospect.
He's a good
but
NBA player.
He's a good NBA player, but like also I think Nique is a little bit different. Like he's athletic. I've seen some highlights of him getting some pin blocks. Like Keegan's nothing about Keegan Murray is like flashy, exciting, highlight reel material. Like I think that could be fun, is to kind of get this guy who is athletic, he's springy, he's not 6'2", but he's also not 6'8", but in shoes, 6'7", in shoes, right? Yeah. We eventually will get there. I think it's a different player model, and I think it's his playmaking is going to be exciting. Like I don't think he's just going to be a shooter. I think he's going to be like Brendan said, like a jack of all trades. And when you get that in a summer league environment, you can get some pretty fun games. Yeah. And I think at least for the summer, I think we will be excited, and that generally turns into the season excitement as well. I think that's going to be probably a completely different conversation. Like if we want to talk about where is Nique going to get minutes with this team, I think we don't really know what the team's going to look like, but I think at the moment it's that part's a little murky.
It's also just not much risk involved. Again, 27 top 16 protected pick that the Spurs own. That's probably going to be around the same 24 spot in 2027, just totally guessing, or it's 2 seconds. Like, it's not like if Nique doesn't work out, I don't think we're going to be sitting there like, oh my God, look at who they even trade. Look at who OKC is picking, or who they're trading this pick for down the line.
Yeah. And I think the main part of this is when you see what Nique could be and you add that to what the Kings are trying to do, that's what's exciting about it. Like I said, it's the idea and the thought process that has excited me. And once you add Maxime Reynaud or some of these other guys that we're looking at for tonight, boys, It's going to be time to ride. On the other side, will Malik Monk be along for that ride? That is the question. As Sam Amick dropped this banger of an article, I told Frankie Cardicelli there wouldn't be a trade generator. I lied. Allen Stiles, Sactown Sports.
Even local
It's Allen Stiles.
on Sactown Sports.
12:30. Taking up to 2 p.m. The Roundtable's taking us up to 1 p.m. And Brendan, the first thing I thought when people are confused because of the shooting guard forward stuff, I will say this: if we're gonna start to formulate the Nique Clifford narrative here, we got to stop with the Devin Carter comparison thing. We got to stop with that.
Why?
That's not gonna fly with people.
Why is that?
Because
People
it's
are
just
down on Devin?
because people are saying so we took another guard, and I don't think we took another guard. I think he plays the guard position at times and plays the forward position at times. You can't play Devin at the forward position, really.
I think there's definitely, like Scott said yesterday, he thinks Nique can also play the 3, and I don't think you really have that with Devin. It's just a difference in the height. I think that they play fairly similar, like down to the rebounding. Almost 10 rebounds a game for Nique, and Devin was out there getting more rebounds per game than Donovan Clingan in college. So I think there's similarities with that. They pass the ball well, even though they're a little bit more off-ball players, I would say. Questionable three-point shooting, even though it's been better for Nique. I think that you've seen more of a sample size, even if it's been a little bit streaky in there. But I think there are a lot of similarities to those guys, and I don't think that's a bad thing.
Frankie?
I mean, the three-point shooting, I was kind of thinking about even like how players like I was trying to think of the player who was not a great three-point shooter early in college and ended up strong. And it was Keon. Keon was someone who we were kind of wondering if his three-point shooting would kind of translate, and he was 8th in the NBA in three-point shooting. So I think his form looks good. And again, like the thing about Devin, we know that the shot it's
unique.
It's very unique.
That's the worst part right now for Devin.
Yeah, if he could shoot, I mean, I do think that he'd be an ideal candidate to be, a starting guard, a starting NBA guard. The defense is there. The athleticism is there too. He definitely has some secret bounce. I'll say Clifford is someone who, I'm watching his tape last night. He definitely has some sneaky athleticism, and kind of like going back to like the Keegan thing about having another forward. If he is going to play the forward spot, because people on Twitter were kind of going back and forth about is he a guard or is he a forward? And
right.
6'6", 200 pounds. You're probably playing small forward in the NBA. I don't think that he's going to, especially with the Kings in their current state of shooting guards, they're not going to plug him into that depth chart.
Right.
So I do think that's a difference in my opinion, obviously, is the fact that I think that you get more reliable offense from a Nique Clifford. I don't know if Devin Carter is going to be able to find that going into next year or not. It will take more time. Well, it's never be an option. You see guys like Dyson Daniels who struggled on the offensive end. You kind of just make defense part of your identity. Is that something that Devin Carter is going to have to do? I think it's too early to know. He played half a rookie season, but I want to say the crazy part, I don't know if you guys feel the same, just like off of pure potential and pure numbers of what you have now, higher ceiling than Devin Carter, Nique Clifford, or Devin Carter. I don't know. I think it's hard to say. I think right now when you look at just what he can do on the floor, Clifford to me probably has a little bit of a higher ceiling because of the shot alone.
Yeah, I think the thing, I saw a comparison with Nique and Josh Hart, but to me, Nique offensively, and I guess maybe it looks different when you're looking at Mountain West versus NBA defenses, but to me, Nique has more of an offensive skill set than Josh Hart. That to me,
that's what I mean. That's what the numbers say.
Yeah.
But again, Josh Hart has shown that he could improve. I think his 3-point shooting got better. He's someone who gets a lot of second chance points because he's one of the best rebounding. I think technically he's a forward, but I think he came into the league as a guard. But we knew when he was in Los Angeles and in New Orleans, he could rebound like the best of them. And in New York, he's proven he can do that even more so. So, yeah, I just think that when you look at all the things he can do, sure, the rebounding is there. Like Brendan said, he can play make in a pinch. But the offense is what seems like he had that kind of pure scorer look to him. And in creating off the dribble, self-creation is such a huge part of the NBA. Something even Keegan Murray still trying to work on himself in going into year 4. So he has that. And if we're comparing him to Devin Carter, that's one thing he doesn't have.
Oh, go ahead.
I'd say a little more like Dante DiVincenzo than Josh Hart. Maybe like a combination of the two. Like I just think Dante has a little bit more off the dribble to him,
A little bigger though.
than Dante. Yeah.
He's bigger.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see him. That's why I'm excited to see him. There's some guys that like you see,
For
like
sure.
they can be listed, whatever. But like, I mean, I specifically think of like Paolo Banchero. Like I think Paolo's listed at 6'8", and I remember Summer League the first time we saw him, I was like, this guy looks like he's 7 feet tall.
Yeah.
So I think there's definitely a difference.
Kevin Durant is. Do we know how?
No,
tall
I
he
mean
is?
he's listed
He's
at
definitely
6'9",
7
6'10", but yeah, he's 7.
He's 7'1".
Yeah.
Yeah. Again,
How
the
tall are
only
you, Alan?
well, I was gonna say the only man in the
He's got to
history
be
of
6 feet,
the
right?
history of men to lie about their height shorter is Kevin Durant. As we move to Malik Monk, guys, there was that banger of an article that Sam Amick put out, and you got Matt George now saying, "Don't be surprised if it's Malik Monk," talking about the abundance of 2 threes, whatever you want. This thing is starting to heat up a little bit. The Raptors conversation. Where are you at with and obviously Jonathan Kuminga got brought up as well. Where are you at with Malik Monk? I guess post first round pick, and now they add another small forward shooting guard. Are you hearing anything about Malik Monk that you can share with us? And regardless of whether you're hearing anything or not, what's the direction? Where do you see this going, and why is this Malik Monk conversation starting to heat up? Brendan, let's start with you.
I think that it has to do with what we've talked about plenty these last couple roundtables, is that I think Scott Perry is going to completely rework this roster. I think that he is trying to do that in all directions. It seems like the 2 guys that he would prefer to stick around are Keon Ellis and Keegan Murray. Outside of that, it just seems like open season, essentially. And I think that Malik is one of those guys, when you look at the contracts, that you'd think probably has some value.
Let me ask you a question. The fact that Malik is starting to get brought up more, when we would all argue that Malik is a better package value than DeMar DeRozan, is that the Kings? The reason we're starting to see this is that the Kings saying, all right, the DeMar DeRozan stuff doesn't look, because we always said one of the 3 had to go, right, in order for this to work between LaVine, DeRozan, and Malik. Is that the Kings saying, all right, DeMar doesn't really want to leave, number one, they nothing like us, and number 2, the market might not be as strong as Allen Stiles thinks, so maybe there is a world where we have to live with DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine, and we make up for the defense and things like that by moving Malik Monk.
Yeah, I think there is a growing thought that like DeMar could end up on the roster going into next season, but it's not going to be for a lack of trying. And I think that what you're saying definitely makes sense to me, that, maybe they didn't see what was out there or didn't like what was out there for DeMar. And you don't have to rush that necessarily. Next year, he's under contract. The year after is only a partial guarantee. So it could be one of those things where like DeMar probably helps a team a lot at the trade deadline, for example. And again, I think this is going to be like a year-long process where I kind of think we're signing up for this whole next year to be Scott Perry reworking everything. And it kind of feels like it's the year after where we're really going to see that identity sort of full-fledged and in action. But I think that it's essentially Scott being like, hey, anybody's on the table. We'd like to keep Keegan and Keon. But Malik is somebody that you would think would have some value around the league. So you consider that, you're having conversations with Miami and they're not interested in DeMar. They could easily be like, hey, what about Malik Monk over there? And that could be how these are going down for all we know.
Malik in Miami. Should have been the Taj Mahal, Chris, in Orlando.
Orlando, right?
What are your thoughts, Chris, on kind of this? And really, it started last week with the Clutch Points article, but this new wave of Malik Monk rumors.
Yeah, I've been trying to figure it out, and just kind of the best solution I can get is almost like a process of elimination where, we know it's going to be incredibly difficult to move on from Zach LaVine. I think Sabonis, you could say it's going to be pretty difficult. And I think that there's maybe some hesitancy to pull the trigger on that from the King side of things as well. And that leaves, a DeRozan versus Malik Monk conversation. And, like you laid out, I wonder if they think Malik can get them more value. I wonder if they think maybe if we are going to be a team next year with those guys, maybe, DeRozan's the one that makes sense. LaVine's obviously a 2 or a 3. DeRozan, you can say the same. Like Malik, a little bit lost in the positional shuffle too. Like he could just, again, be the odd man out. I think there's a couple reasons to point to, but yeah, the one that seems to make the most sense is the value conversation. And I wonder if it is as I more so have been thinking about the comparisons between DeMar and Zach, like DeMar does make a lot of impact towards winning. Like you do, or just impact in general, right? Like when DeMar is out there, for better or worse, you feel him. And I think it's, again, something we talked about a lot more so in comparison to Zach LaVine. But maybe, again, if they are thinking we want to build some sort of core, some sort of foundation, some sort of good environment to have young players nurtured and all that stuff, like maybe it's just a calculation of we would rather have vets like DeMar and, have them kind of establish the culture that we want moving forward, as opposed to Malik, who is a younger guy who might have some aspirations, who might feel like, his plans got shuffled a little bit more than what he initially literally signed up for last offseason. Yeah. So I think there's I don't think that there's an obvious reason, but everything points to me towards, like, I think it's just we have to, I'll say reluctantly do it.
Yeah, Frankie, I wanted to kind of give you a little notes here before you got going. I think while Chris was talking, I thought about the fact that the reality is Malik is, and everybody knows I love this term, he's a bit of a tweener, right? In a couple different ways. He's a combo guard. His age is kind of a tweener age where he's 27 now. He's not part of the young guns. He's not part of, the elder statesman quite yet. And a lot of teams can say, this is what we want him to be. Malik said he was 4 different positions, right, this past season. And the other thing I would say is we keep saying, everyone, get rid of DeMar DeRozan, get rid of DeMar DeRozan. There are teams out there. Now, DeMar's value is tough, but if you get rid of DeMar DeRozan, you could make the argument, and you keep Malik Monk, you need a closer, right? You still need a number one. If you keep DeMar DeRozan, you still have that number one. You still have that closer, and maybe you could find Malik's production somewhere else.
Yeah, it's tough because both were, the Kings were not granted a super successful team last year, but both those players were very valuable from the standpoint that they provide you with something that the Kings have struggled to find for a long time, as far as, the Kings and De'Aaron Fox, who was their leading scorer for years, right? When he got moved, that was DeMar. DeMar was their 1A, which is crazy to say, but he was their leading scorer. So you move him, how do you fill that void? Now, Malik, same thing. The Kings have been super successful, in my opinion, because of a lot of reasons, but over the past years, super successful as far as not at the bottom of the Western Conference. But Malik Monk was a huge, part of that equation that worked, being a sixth man. They took him out of that comfort zone. And we kind of saw what they look like when he's not in that role. And I think Doug kind of made that move at the end of the year to put him back in that familiar setting. And while that worked out, and that might be great to have on this team, if Scott Perry and this front office are trying to, as we think they're trying to do, which is improve and not tear it down, there really are 2 players you can move realistically that aren't on massive contracts. It's DeMar and it's Malik.
Yeah. And
like you said, age might be a factor. Maybe teams are willing to part with nothing of value for DeMar, who's turning 30, I think 36 this year. And Malik's on a contract that is pretty team friendly for the next couple of years, especially with the CBA going up every year and the salary cap rising. So I feel like one of the 2 are going to be gone, and, both would be interesting. I can't imagine the Kings parting with 2, dynamic self-creating scorers. But to me, it does seem like Malik has kind of leapfrogged DeMar as far as the more likely to be moved. Yeah. And I feel like DeMar maybe just kind of the fact that Scott Perry's been on the league for a long time and has good relationships with agents and probably with DeMar as well. And Malik is someone who's younger and maybe could benefit more from a fresh start. And well, that might not be popular for Kings fans, obviously, but Malik is someone that probably has more value from a standpoint of you have him for next year and then a player option for the final year for $21 million. That might hold some value, but obviously we haven't seen anything happen yet.
I think the other thing you have to consider a little bit is, put yourself in Scott Perry's shoes. You're coming into this position, inheriting a roster, and you're like, all right, we want to establish an identity. We want it based off these 6 core principles. First thing you probably do is look at your current roster and think, who does not fit that?
Yeah.
And we got to move off of them. And I think it's just worth considering that that's probably a process that he's going through right now.
When we return, we talk to the guys about Jonathan Kuminga and his fit based on the Sam Amick article, and we close the loop on Malik Monk, necessity or luxury. Allen Stiles, Sactown Sports.
Hey,
I got some bad news, guys. I got some bad news. We'll talk about it more in the 1 o'clock hour, but all of my picks for the second round, all of them are going in the 30s. Like, not even close, dude. They're all projected to go early 30s. This is ridiculous.
Probably could have figured that out.
Hmm?
I said you probably could have figured that out before you started hyping up.
This is ridiculous, man. By the way, NBC Sports Bay Area, they did a mock draft, and they have the Kings taking Ryan Nembhard, little bro of Andrew Nembhard, and he is little bro because he's barely 6 feet.
Great.
So, Ryan Nembhard, you in?
Undrafted. Sure.
Ryan Nembhard or Chris Murray?
I'm not doing it at 42.
Both.
Ooh.
Yeah.
From the Blazers?
Yeah.
Chris Murray?
I'm saying it's not that hard to get Chris Murray right now.
You know what? That is true. That is true. It is hard to get Jonathan Kuminga, and that's what the Kings may be trying to do, guys. So your segue strikes again. Thank you. We did have some of this conversation during the break, but I wanted to bring it to the air. The reality is, we talked a little bit about this earlier. Malik Monk is probably the only player that the Warriors would be interested in, and I think the holdup would be it's either not enough for the Warriors for Jonathan Kuminga, or it's too much to give up for Jonathan Kuminga. So what we kind of broke down, and I want to start with you, Chris. You know what? Let's take a step back and just get to the fit of Jonathan Kuminga. Because if I'm Domantas Sabonis, and right now Sam reported that things are good, early conversations, if they use a Malik Monk, who is not a point guard, but somewhat he could do some point guard things, if they move Malik Monk for a 22-year-old Jonathan Kuminga, that to me could be a situation where Domantas Sabonis says, what exactly is the plan here? So how do you feel about that fit before we even start to talk about who could get moved?
Yeah, I think the only reason why I could see him doing that is just the age part of it. I think maybe I mean, I don't know how Sabonis feels about his usage percentage, but I think maybe part of him would say like, hey, that actually makes a lot more sense for me. But yeah, as a raw fit, it's just so tough with DeRozan and Levine and Sabonis, right? It's like Jonathan Kuminga is somebody who needs to go to Brooklyn. He needs to go to Utah. He needs to go to a situation where he can spread his wings and fly and just figure it out. Like if it's good, if he's going to be good, if he's going to be bad, if he's going to be Josh Smith, we just need to figure out what it's going to be. And I don't think the Kings are the best situation for it. I think from a pure, a pure talent swing definitely makes all the sense in the world. It's the exact kind of mentality the Kings should have. Those are the kind of guys the Kings should be going for. But ultimately, I just don't think they have the real estate right now to give him space to thrive.
Yeah,
Brendan?
I think it's really dependent on, because we're talking about a sign and trade scenario as the Marlins manager just gets tossed from this Giants game in the first inning.
Right.
Wow. 2 outs only.
Yeah, pretty wild.
A's lost again, by the way, 8-9.
Yeah, they just showed their record about 500. It's really bad. I think we're talking sign and trade, obviously, and I think a lot of that would be dependent on how much is Kuminga making. And I think that's really tough to gauge with how last season went, especially not getting really run in the postseason. But I agree with Chris. I mean, I think he makes a lot of sense on a younger team where he can kind of spread his wings. He and Ace Bailey might be the only two people in the world that are like, hey, get me to Washington.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
Well, Ace didn't even want to go to Charlotte.
Which is crazy. Well, I mean, yeah, I don't know about wanting to go to Charlotte, but if you want to go to Washington.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I would like the direction of it, of getting younger, trying to go a little bit more upside. I think that Kuminga could probably be more valuable to the Kings long-term than what Malik could. I think it's a little bit of a toss-up. So I don't know. I could talk myself into it, but honestly, I'm just not very high on Kuminga as a player.
You guys, man.
I don't know what's there. And I think the hardest step in the process for him is he's got to accept that he's not a star
yet.
And are we going to get that?
What do you mean know what is there? He is not a shooter. He's not a floor spacer. He's going to demand a high volume of shots. They're going to come in the mid-range. They're going to come attacking the basket. How does that
demanding
fit?
A high level of shots? I mean,
you don't think if he comes to Sacramento and we're just do a sign and trade for $30+ million salary, he wouldn't try to be
no. He's not getting. Kuminga's getting like 23, and he's going to like it a year.
I don't think
nobody is giving him 25+.
Miami from what Sam was saying, Miami seems to like him.
I think Brooklyn should go after him. Brooklyn's like the only team with cap space this offseason.
Someone will. I think
and then
someone's
the
going to
Warriors
be
probably
aggressive.
get Cam Johnson.
Right.
Sure.
That would suck.
They're gonna. Well, they'll get something back. Maybe they'll get Wiggins back from Miami.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll get Terrence Mann.
So,
Nick Claxton.
but okay. Malik Monk, obviously Malik Monk for Kuminga, you would do it, right, Frankie?
Again, like I just don't know if he's an ideal fit for this roster.
No. I don't disagree, but it's more about. That's why I said if you get, and I've been consistent with this the whole time. If you get Kuminga, then DeMontis Sabonis, we're going to find somewhere for you to go. I don't think he fits on this roster, but it's more about would you do it and say, sorry, Sabonis, we can't say no to the talent. If you want to have a conversation, have a conversation.
Yeah, I don't think in any universe of Golden State saying, yeah, we'll send you Kuminga for Malik Monk.
But that's what I'm asking. If you were to add Devin Carter to that, would you now say it's too much for the Kings to give up? Or would you do it?
No, I just think that if any deal involving the King, if the Kings were to hypothetically trade for Jonathan Kuminga, I feel like point blank they're saying we want Keegan Murray back to start. They want Keegan Murray back.
No. Sign and trade?
No, I feel like that's what they would ask for though. If they're saying, yeah, you can sign him, we won't match it if you give us Keegan Murray.
Yeah, I don't know if the Warriors are in a position where they're matching anything, anyways, though.
Because
what was the DeMar sign and trade cost? What?
Second
it was
round pick, right?
Harrison Barnes,
not much.
Duarte,
It was Harrison.
yeah.
That's right.
HB for salary.
Like I don't know. I think Golden State would. It depends how they feel about Malik, but
Yeah.
to me that's good value for the Warriors.
Yeah,
Malik and
compared
Devin.
to. Well, I think that's too
just
much.
Malik.
I think
Okay.
that's too much. Even if we were talking just Malik.
Okay.
Yeah.
No.
I kind of think like, yeah, Kuminga's like a higher ceiling, lower floor version of like the RJ Barrett trade. And to me, I don't know how I feel about like that value, but I makes sense to me.
I think in a perfect world, you're looking at a combination of a baby Giannis and a Jaden McDaniels type deal.
Maybe like a Ben Mathurin.
I just think that there's potential that it could go bad with Kuminga. That's where I get the lower floor from.
Yeah.
Like, I think then, yeah, I mean, I think there's potential that you trade for Kuminga. He just kind of always like he's going to be talented for sure, but if his shot doesn't develop, he's going to be an under 50% shooter from the field who probably shoots 32% or under from three. And yeah, he's going to get on a not a high volume as a blanket, but it's
Right.
going to be high volume based off of how he's getting his shots. It's just not going to be an efficient game. And I think that's the problem is right now he's climbing an uphill battle because his game is very at the rim, very athletic. And that's just not very, unless he's going to be ridiculously Shea level efficient at the rim or get to the free throw line. It just doesn't make sense for his shot profile to give him that kind of volume.
Yeah, I don't think he's helping you win games right now. I think if you're making that move, not like he won't help you win any games. You'll have occasional ones still, but I think if you're making that move, it's more about the potential. It's like an investment. It's more about the potential long-term just return that you could get off of that. And, you know, I don't know how much we should care about the fit if you're going in that direction, because then, like you said, I think that probably signals that you're going in an entirely different direction. And everybody else could look really different on the roster. But it's weird to me because Kuminga doesn't fit the identity that like Perry's talking about.
Well, no, he doesn't, and we're up against it here. But the other part of this is he doesn't really fit the current model of what stars look like in the NBA. Again, to kind of close it the way we started it.
He's not a
You guys
star.
didn't see my clip of BJ Armstrong hyping up Jonathan Kuminga then, did you?
I saw
this morning.
Yeah. I'm just saying, but he is a little tweener.
Very high on
A tweener in a different way, where it's you're an athletic guy, but you're what 6'6", 6'7". You can't shoot yet, but I mean, I would blow it up and go. I would go get him, Nique,
Jordan
Keon.
Poole.
Yeah.
Well, you need someone to handle the rock, so that's a good call.
Jordan Poole.
And you rock him over there.
And
Real
Dennis
quick,
Schroeder.
David guys.
West.
No, now you don't need him. You go get Trey Jones instead. Any second rounders you got your eyes on, like me?
A lot of people think Brea is someone the Kings have liked. They brought him in for a workout.
Whitey was on that, yeah.
Tyrese Proctor, they worked him out. A lot of Kings fans are talking about him right now. Again,
6'5".
this late in the
Saw that.
draft, though, anything can go. Again, Monty McNair at this point would have moved this away for 2 seconds. Excuse me. So, I don't know. You guys like?
I don't have names. I honestly am comfortable enough kind of throwing out right now. But I will say also just keep tabs on undrafted guys in the second round. There's not guaranteed deals. And so a lot of guys will say, hey, don't even pick me. Just let me go undrafted. I'm going to pick where I want to go. That wasn't the case with Keon, but obviously Keon's in Austin Reeves for sure. Colin Castleton did the same thing with the Lakers the year after. Random that I just thought of that name. But
deep cut.
Yeah, I mean, just keep an eye on undrafted guys. Those guys can make just as much of an impact.
I'd say Janai Broom. Not for the Kings, but just in general. I just want to see where he goes.
Okay.
I don't have high hopes for him. But
there
he's
you
the
go.
Best player in college.
Grant Nelson, go get him. That is Brendan Nunez, Chris Watkins, Frankie Cardicelli. Thank you guys. Go follow them on social media. Go follow Sactown Sports on social media, sactownsports.com as well. When we return, Malik Monk, necessity or luxury? Allen Stiles, Sactown Sports.
This is the story of the one. As I say,